Every time when I make a film, the first thought was like Sundance, and it was no exception with this one.
Welcome to Variety's virtual Sundance studio. My name is David Viramontes, and I'm Variety's social media coordinator, here with Nanfu Wang of the documentary In the Same Breath. What was it like capturing this footage, given that we're still in the middle of this pandemic?
First of all, I felt like energized making this film during the pandemic, because I constantly imagine if I weren't making this film, I would feel really upset and angry and depressed at the situation. And making the film is an outlet for me to process all those questions.
The most striking moment in the film to me was your ending narration. Those final words are chilling to hear. At what point in the process did you land on that line, or was that a concept that you set out to accomplish?
The exact words and the exact image was a process of, constant tweaking. The process of editing is knowing where I want the film to go. And that ending concept was always the central theme and central question that drove me to make this film.
I noticed one of the things you talk about is how you didn't imagine that the virus would cripple the US the way it has.
That was something that I didn't think about until April, when the outbreak hit the US. So it was, to me, a very surprising and confusing moment of understanding how could it possibly happening here in the way that it happened. Somehow it forced me to confront my own bias or preconceived notions of what America was when I came here and what it is now.
The images you captured of U.S. nurses talking about the pandemic, and specifically of them watching like anti-mask protests here in the U.S. Can you talk a little bit about that?
When we filmed the reopening protests, it was, again, a confusing moment, because at first I looked at them and all I felt was angry. And then the more I spent time and had the patience of listening over and over, and every word that they had to say, give them the time. And then I started seeing the rationale behind their reasoning. And I started wondering, how did they form their ideology, their belief system? Where did it come from? What influenced them? Where did they get their information? I just wanted them to have a way of responding, and that's why we showed them some of the information, some of the news clips, and also footage that we captured to see what they would have to say, because they are at the opposite side of the protesters. That's why we filmed both of them, and kind of like getting their thoughts from both sides too.
Was there anything that you uncovered that you didn't expect?
A lot of the cover-ups, a lot of the lies that we later learned that it wasn't the truth, especially in the early stages of making the film. The way that the government censored information in China is really strict, so it was hard to find out when the government knew something and what they knew. When we looked at the propaganda, it's almost like an archaeologists going through, digging through all the material and finding the traces of information. And through that, we pieced together the narrative and finally understood this is when they knew this information. And yet they were saying contradictory things to the public. They were saying the opposite things to what they already knew. So that's what we discovered.
How many potential collaborators did you reach out to that ended up not wanting to participate?
I would say maybe another 10. Is either not wanting, it's not complete not wanting to participate. It's through the first conversation. It's both of us need to have an understanding, and I needed to feel confident that I can trust somebody in participating in the project, so that they couldn't reveal any information to the authority, and they couldn't potentially jeopardize the entire filmmaking.
You feature people that were contacted by the authorities in the film. I wonder, has there been anyone that reached out to you from the government or the authorities about this film?
No, not directly. I live in the US, and they normally couldn't directly contact me here. But in November, there were 2 secret agents went to talk to my mom. And then we had 3 collaborators in China in May, April, and March. Each of them separately from different places, so were contacted by the police. And the information that they had to complete report to the police. So we knew that those parts were compromised. And those 3 people ended up like terminating. They didn't want to become involved after the intimidation they received from the government.
When audiences watch this film, what is the thing that you want them to walk away from your film?
Each one of us lived in this pandemic and are still living in this pandemic. It's really easy to be buried in the everyday news and also the emotions that we felt. And we all are eager to put all of this behind us. And I'm one of them too, for the life to return to normal. But I think it's very dangerous to try to forget everything. It would be dangerous to do that. And the other thing that I'm really hoping Chinese people and people who are seeing China as quote unquote like really effective at handling this pandemic to rethink, reevaluate what they see. Because if we agree that China is effective and the model that they responded to the outbreak was successful, then we are being complicit too in its propaganda and in its censorship. I do hope that people who see the film would think critically.